Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Cabral, and once again, it's the Top 5 Weekly. This week, in honor of Blade Runner 2049 and the cinematographer of that film, Roger Deakins. It's been a topic that we've been wanting to do for quite a while now. We've saved it for this week. We talked about this months ago. It's the best cinematographers, top 5 cinematographers in film from the years past to present. We could choose cinematographers in all genres of film. You don't know with these two characters that I got with me what they're gonna choose. With that being said, Andrew, welcome back.
Yes. We have finally reached it. My favorite subject of all time, cinematographers. If anybody knows me, knows the first thing I look for when I watch a movie is how aesthetically is this thing put together. Is it well put together? Is it not put together? Because film at its core is a visual medium, and without it, you're kind of failing at what you're trying to do. You're trying to tell a story through visuals. And we are discussing one of the best to ever do it, who is still currently do it, plus a lot of people who have done it in the past, and some of which are still doing it today as well.
Absolutely correct. And my other cohort in crime, Mr. Stephen Billings, welcome back.
Wait, we're doing something illegal here? Wow. If I'd have known that, I would have done some drugs right before. But
no, that was last week's episode. You didn't do that episode. So you weren't involved with drugs.
Well, drugs are something that can happen at any time. It doesn't matter. But yes, cinematographers. Cinematography is, yes, I agree with. It's one of my favorite subjects too. It's one of them things. It's like they're the unsung heroes of a lot of films. You don't really. The director gets all the credit for mostly. If a movie does well, director gets all the credit. But really, when they're matched up with a great cinematographer, that's a director will tell you that they were like, if it wasn't for this guy, I wouldn't have been able, because that's their job. Their job is to help the director create his vision, whether it be the lighting, the framing, the camera movement. There's a lot of things that go into cinematography, and we'll go into that when we talk about these different cinematographers. So,
but normally we wait to about number 3 on our list to talk about the movie and the subject and whatnot. But because we're doing cinematographers and we can't talk about the person that we're doing, he is not on any of our lists because we're celebrating him in his film that's coming out this week, Blade Runner 2049, Roger Deakins. Andrew, pick a film or a couple films that really stand out for you for Roger Deakins. And I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, something like 17 Oscar nominations without winning one. You know, that's stat out there.
It is. It is very, very sad. He has been nominated actually 13 times, and soon to be 14 if the world of cinema is right and does things that are right. Because as we will discuss, 2049 looks immaculate, and that's something what we've come to expect from Roger Deakins. All of the films he does the cinematography work on are amazing, and some of them are very well known. But he started out doing documentary work way back in the 70s, and then graduated towards feature films. But one film that came out a few years ago, and this is going to be a kind of a different pick than I think most people will mention. That's why I'm kind of doing it, and that's one where I started to really notice, okay, cinematography is an extremely integral and noticeable part of a film. And that is from 2012, and the film is Skyfall. Skyfall is one of the James Bond films from Daniel Craig. It is the 3rd film. It is one of the better films in that franchise. It's kind of 2 great films and 2 not-so-great films. And one thing I noticed in this film is how stunning visually it looks. Roger Deakins and Sam Mendes, the combination of those two was just incredible. The lighting and the shot selection and just the way he would shoot the action sequence is just incredible. It is, to me, the best technically looking James Bond film of all time. just from a technical standpoint, maybe not plot wise. We can debate this all day, but that's for a different show. But that was a film that really, really got me. I mean, he's done work with the Coen brothers, Fargo and The Big Lebowski come to mind, and of course, No Country for Old Men, which I'm kind of shocked he didn't win Best Cinematography for that, but I think he probably lost to another well-known cinematographer that we'll probably be discussing later for another really gorgeous-looking movie. But I don't want to take up too much time because I know Steven wants to talk too.
Yeah, before Steven talks, I'm going to say something, though. That scene at the end, near the end of the movie, or pretty much at the end, where you finally see what Skyfall is, it's James Bond's home. Everything from that point on in Skyfall is absolutely breathtaking. How he films that house and the fog and the sky and the lights and all of that is just unbelievably just gorgeous. So I just wanted to say that. I absolutely agree with you. That movie is unbelievable.
The orange lighting at the end of that movie and the silhouettes with Javier Bardem's character walking like almost out of the fire and flames is incredible.
You know, and the fog in those moors, how the moisture comes off. It's just like, wow, how do you capture such beautiful? It just looks so beautiful, like you were almost there in a lot of ways. But all right, that's enough about Skyfall. Steven, talk about your love of Roger Deakins.
Yes, he's done, as Andrew was saying, he's got a lot of great films. He's been nominated many times. One that I wanted to highlight that I've always really loved his work on is one that's become one of the most classic films of all time now. You see it all the time, and that's The Shawshank Redemption. It's freaking amazing cinematography in this movie. I mean, you know, we know the scene. He comes out. He comes out in the water. It's raining outside, and you get that shot overhead. He's just looking up into the sky. Just amazing cinematography in this movie, and he just, you know, depending on who's the director, you know, every director has their kind of signature color palette. And in this film, you get a lot more of your kind of grays, some warm colors, but mostly kind of grays. Frank Darabont kind of stays in like grays and some greens and stuff like that. And he just does, he makes everything just seem really melancholy a lot of times. But when there's scenes of joy, he brightens it up a little bit. Like there's so much to cinematography, not only for aesthetics, but to help almost in a way manipulate your emotions. You know, that's what film does. Film's trying to invoke emotion in its audience, and not only with words, with the script, but with what you're seeing. And you don't even know it's happening, but it's happening. And it's, you know, it's just what's so great about cinematographers. But Deakins is definitely one of the best of all time. And this was one that I've always loved. So, yeah.
Absolutely. It is a beautiful film. I mean, it's hard to capture something like a prison and drab uniforms and some of the things, but it really did have a beauty to it. Shawshank Redemption did. And, you know, obviously the words of Stephen King are translated into this film. And so, you know, he's a very visual writer, Stephen King is. You can really imagine the words when he writes. So having that being translated into a movie, it was probably on the page for how beautiful and how aesthetic and how they could capture the prison scenes and what normally would be kind of drab scenery, you know. But my choice is a little film. It's not really I mean, it's a well-known film because of the star of the film, but when you talk about like great westerns and great films and films of Roger Deakins, you don't think of this film, but when you go and watch it, you're like, oh my God, what a breathtakingly just, you know, I've heard people, this is the funniest part about this, I've heard people actually say, wow, this film looks like it had the cinematography of Roger Deakins. Well, guess what? It did. don't say it looks like Roger Deakins. It did have Roger Deakins cinematography, and it was a really breathtaking look at the Old West and in the kind of movie that has like a Terrence Malick feel to it, you know, and it looks like a Terrence Malick film, but it's not a Terrence Malick film. But the cinematographer is Roger Deakins, and it's a really good little underrated Western called The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. It just you know, a lot of the scenes are in little shacks or in the woods or in the trees and just the grass, like the sweeping grass and the clouds. I don't know if it was just bad days that they were filming on or what, but the clouds and the wheat fields are like an amazing contrast off of each other. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful film. And of course, you know, Brad Pitt's the star of it. So, I mean, it's one of those films. And it's got Casey Affleck, an Oscar winner. Whoever thought Assassination of Jesse Jones, we'd be talking about an Oscar winner, and it's not Brad Pitt. It's Casey Affleck. Yeah, I chose that movie because I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful film. And it was a lot of people like, oh, it looks like a Terrence Malick film. Well, it's not. The reason why is he captured what kind of the feel of a lot of Terrence Malick films looked like in The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. But that's enough about Roger Deakins. We're going to talk a little bit more about Blade Runner 2049 a little later on. Now we're going to go into our lists of our favorite or our top 5 cinematographers. And let's get it started. Andrew, you're up first.
Yes, I'm going to be using my number 5 to highlight a cinematographer that I don't think a lot of people know about or are aware of, but he is really one of the best of all time if you look on any great cinematographers list, and that is James Wong Howe. He was a cinematographer whose career spanned from the 1920s all the way up until his death in the mid-1970s, and the film I want to highlight from his long career is Seconds from 1966, directed by John Frankenheimer, starring Rock Hudson. And everything about this film is subversive, from its subject matter to its aesthetic. Everything in this film is the complete opposite of the way you would actually shoot a movie, and it's done so purposely. Like, every angle is weird, every camera movement is weird. Everything about the movie aesthetically is weird, and it's supposed to be purposeful because the movie is very surreal, and it's just so unique. And I was looking at his filmography, and a lot of the stuff I haven't seen, but Seconds is one that I think is a super underrated movie. It's just one of John Frankenheimer's best, and I thought I would talk about it because no one else really does, unfortunately, even though I think it's an important movie to watch when it comes to cinematic history and just the way films had evolved going from the 50s to the 60s. So yeah, definitely check out Seconds and look up James Wong Howe because he's done a lot of films that I think people will know about. Some of my one of my favorites is HUD, starring Paul Newman, directed by Martin Rett. I mean, he shot Yankee Doodle Dandy, that starred James Cagney, as well as The Thin Man, starring William Powell and Myrna Loy. So those are the movies he's kind of famous for. But Seconds is the one I picked.
I did not know about that film cinematographer, Andrew. That is
it's a deep cut.
That was definitely a deep cut. You got me on that one. I mean, Yankee Doodle Dandy is a beautiful, beautiful film, in my opinion. You know, when you're dealing with a lot of stuff involving the stage, it's hard to create a kind of a beautiful film or a beautiful setting. But he really, the changing of the sets on the stage, he really was able to capture some of the backdrops of where the film was going and whatnot. So that is definitely a film that I know. You know, I love that film. So that was a great choice in my opinion. But Stephen, you, my friend, are up next.
Alrighty. I decided to use my number 5. I mean, I'm like you said at the beginning, I'm going more with favorites. I'm not gonna try to rank these guys. These are all great cinematographers. I'm not gonna. It's too hard to rank these, but my number 5 is gonna be one that I didn't know much about him, but just looking at what films he's done, I was like, I gotta at least mention this. I gotta put this guy on my list because his movies, especially for the time period, are just beyond beautiful. Like I can't, like when I saw these movies, I'm like, I can't believe these movies came out in the 40s and the 50s. And that's Jack Cardiff, who did worked with Powell and Pressburger. The movie I'm notably going to talk about is The Red Shoes, because The Red Shoes is just ridiculous. Like we did a 52 must-see movies episode on it. We talk about it there in depth, but this movie, when you watch it, you can't believe that this movie came out. I'm thinking 1948 is when it came out, I think. Yes, 48. And it's just, the fact that they were able, this is an early example of like, them actually shooting a literal play happening as it's going on, a ballet, and it's how they do it and how they, cut it together, and just the colors are so vibrant. It's just amazing what he was able to shoot, and it blows me away still every time I've watched this movie. Just what they were able to accomplish, which back then, you didn't have a bunch of fancy editing with computers and stuff. You had to do this all with film. So it's even harder, I mean, not all these cinematographers, I'm sure, on our lists all use film. They might have worked with film at once, but I'm sure we might have some more modern cinematographers on our list that work with digital now. But just thinking about what you have to do when you're working with film is just, it stresses me out. And the fact that, you got to try to capture these images, and you only have so much film you can use. You got to budget. It's like, it's crazy. Like these images they get in The Red Shoes are just amazing. And yeah, I can't gush about it enough. Just go watch our 52 must-see movies, and you'll hear me gush about it more. But yeah, Jack Cardiff for The Red Shoes.
That's another deep cut. I mean, you guys are just really surprising me with some of these choices.
He also, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dan, but he also did the cinematography for another one of their movies, The Black Narcissus. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Black Narcissus.
Yeah, and that one's fantastic too. It's just the nuns up in a mountain, and it's just, God, these shots are amazing. But yeah, he's great.
I want to talk about a guy that, if you look at the films look different, and he's worked with filmmakers such as Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese. So that when you work with these guys, you're going to have kind of diverse films. Their films are going to look different, but they still look beautiful. And especially when you're dealing with either 3D or like 75, 80 years ago, you're dealing with a place in time, or you're dealing with kind of a fictional world that the filmmaker creates. Well, but all of the films look gorgeous. The colors stand out. In the one film that he did, Hugo, the 3D melding with the cinematography, what a beautiful film Hugo is. And another film that this man did was The Aviator. But I'm gonna focus on two films that he did that are part 1 and part 2, and that is Kill Bill 1 and Kill Bill 2 from Robert Richardson. Robert Richardson, he just brought this whole world of Kill Bill to life with the colors, and they were just such beautiful, beautiful films, and the characters stand out, and you got vehicles that really like pop on screen, and you just swords and colors and blood and fight scenes, and everything just looked just like you were in this film. Like you could have been like a bystander sitting in the corner of this movie, because these two movies, because they just looked so real, and they do look so present at the time of filming, and while I was watching them, and they're definitely different than The Aviator and Hugo, but they're just beautifully filmed movies, and the colors and everything just stand out for me, and that's why, you know, when I was doing my research in certain movies, movies that I really loved and thought were just beautiful, I thought, oh, okay, Robert Richardson, this guy really knows how to capture the colors and everything, and he did a great job with those two films. So I had Robert Richardson as number 5. All right, going back to Andrew with number 4.
Well, I think sometimes Steven and I have a psychological connection, a telepathic connection. Who knows? Who knows? Because my number 4 is Jack Cardiff, and I want to talk about the Red Shoes. But Steven already did, so I just want to reiterate everything he said. But I'll also say that, yeah, the movie is visually one of the most stunning films I've ever seen. And I'll just say what Steven said. It's shocking what they were able to do in 1948 when it comes to just all of the special effect shots that are in this one really about 10 or to 15 minute sequence of just shooting the play of the Red Shoes itself, which is based on a Hans Christian Andersen story. And yeah, the film is a Technicolor just masterpiece, like gorgeous. And that's kind of what Jack Cardiff was known for, was utilizing Technicolor in a very positive way, in a very good way, because Technicolor was really kind of just starting to become a thing in the 1930s and the 1940s. People were still predominantly shooting in black and white, and they were pretty much shooting black and white almost more dominantly all the way up until like the 60s before color would become the norm. But yeah, The Red Shoes is just a gorgeously stunning film, and Jack Cardiff is not someone who a lot of people know about. I only really know him because of his work with Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. Like Steven said, he shot The Black Narcissus, which was before The Red Shoes, which looks just absolutely stunning. And there's a lot of reds and browns that really pop off screen in his films and with the Technicolor. But he also shot The African Queen with Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn, which is another film that is probably a little more challenging to shoot, since they shot that thing out in Africa and it was just a mess of a production. But yeah, he is a fantastic fantastic cinematographer, and he only won 1 Oscar in his career, and that was a Lifetime Achievement Award, I believe, in 2001. He was nominated, I think, 4 or 5 times throughout his career, but he never won one in competition, which is unfortunate. So yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out his work, particularly the work he did with Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. Just a winning combination all the way around.
Yeah, that's rare. We got two the same one, and I didn't even know about. I didn't know about it, but you guys already obviously have a love of that guy. So that's fantastic. All right, Steven, what is your number 4?
My number 4. This is a guy. His color, the way this guy likes to shoot his films, I've always really loved, because it kind of, I feel like which he works with one of the great directors, I think, of our time, David Fincher. He always has this almost noirish element to his movies a lot. He worked with him on Fight Club, did work on Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and the one I want to talk about is Social Network, which is Jeff Cronenworth. And yeah, he's to me, I chose Social Network because I wanted to choose a film that was a little bit less about trying to be flashy in the visuals in the sense of its color but more about shot composition and framing and how you're telling your story through visuals, or like trying to show the audience something about the characters through visuals, whether it be, you know, choosing to keep, you know, the main character played by Jesse Eisenberg. A lot of if you notice throughout the film, a lot of the framing has his character alone in most of the frames. He's, you know, because he's this character that's narcissistic, and he's kind of he's only working for himself. You know, he has a lot of people working for him, but he's really doing it because he wants to further himself and his ideas. And he, a lot of times throughout the movie, he's by himself in the frame. There's, you know, times when he's with his friend played by Andrew Garfield, where he's with him in the same frame, and you see them together, but rarely they're, you know, there's very interesting things to look into in that film, but also visually in the sense of its color palette, it has got gorgeous, you know, golds, and it's, like I said, it's almost got a haunted quality to it, because this is, you know, going along with the score of the film, it has this very just kind of ominous tone to the movie. And I like that, especially matched with the story itself being this, you know, kind of story about, you know, betrayal and, you know, loyalty and stuff, like, you know, all that stuff. It's a very interesting combination. I think Jeff did a really good job of telling a story here. An Aaron Sorkin script. I mean, it's Aaron Sorkin. I mean, everything about, I love this film. We talked about it a little bit, I think, last time I was on, how it should have won over King's Speech, and it should have, I think, because it's just awesome all the way around. But yes, Jeff Cronenworth's Social Network is my number 4.
Yeah, great film, great. Really, they really capture the essence of Boston, and the buildings, and the you know, the bars and the establishments that are going on and stuff. They really looked lived in. They looked like that people were going into these buildings today, and that's part of what a great cinematographer does. My number 4 is a guy that, you know, may not be the best director, but he made his name as a great cinematographer working with people like Christopher Nolan. And a film, to me, that's just one of the most realistic looking movies and most breathtaking looking movies, because of the mix of regular film and cinema and IMAX, and it was filmed in, you know, in a real live city that was bustling and going on, and they made you feel like you were in the city, like what was going on, you were involved in what was going on. You know, Michael Mann's really good at that as a director, but Wally Pfister was able to capture a cityscape with the IMAX and with the regular camera, that I felt like I could have been a guy who was walking down the street, or I could have been a guy in a restaurant or in a bar while this movie was going on. Like, I was literally in the movie. And he captured places like Tokyo, Shanghai, and places like that, and in Chicago, which are real cities. And he really brought them to life in a visual format that was just breathtaking. And it helps that the story and the direction by Christopher Nolan is there. And my film for Wally Pfister is The Dark Knight. I just think it's a phenomenally looking film, and it was clearly one of the best films of the year. I think it was 2007 or something like that when it came out. But it was the cinematography that really upped it and made it that much better of a film, along with the story and the acting, because sometimes films just don't look good. Superhero films sometimes may not always look good. This is really a beautifully filmed movie, in my opinion, The Dark Knight. So I have Wally Pfister at number 4. And like I said, he may not be the best director. Go back to Andrew, number 3.
Yes, my number 3 is Janusz Kaminski, who is the man who shoots pretty much all of Steven Spielberg's films from Schindler's List on. Coincidentally, the film I chose to highlight is Schindler's List. because visually it is one of the most stunning films for many reasons, for its graphic nature, for what it is depicting on screen, and also for its stunning black and white cinematography. To do black and white cinematography in contemporary times, to do it so beautifully, is something very unique that we don't see a lot. And especially with the subject matter at hand in Schindler's List, it's just a very interesting, just fascinating film to look at. And Janusz Kaminski in general is a fantastic cinematographer. The one thing I will say about Steven Spielberg's films is technically they are gorgeous. They are phenomenal. They are impeccably well shot, regardless of the quality of the film. You know, some are better than others. Some are, you know, great, and some are not so good, especially his more recent work. But yeah, it all looks fantastic. You know, he has a filmography of, like I said, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, Catch Me If You Can, Minority Report, which is just, you know, gorgeous when it comes to the futuristic world in which that film is set. And he's going to be doing Ready Player One, which of course is going to be just a visual spectacle. I'm sure Steven is looking forward to that more than many people are. Actually, people are pretty hyped for that movie in general. But yeah, he is someone who I don't think a lot of people know about, because when everybody thinks of Steven Spielberg movies, they just think of Steven Spielberg and whoever is in it. They don't know about, you know, who is behind the scenes doing a lot of the heavy work, like the cinematographer and the editor and stuff like that. But yeah, Janusz Kaminski is a name people should know more of. It's kind of impressive what he's able to accomplish within the last, you know, 25 years or so. Just an impressive filmography, and he has won 2 Oscars. He won one for Schindler's List, and he won one for Saving Private Ryan, for obvious reasons, because they're both stunningly looked films. He's able to do a lot of things when it comes to camera movement that you don't see a lot in movies. There's a lot of action happening within his frame, a lot of depth of field stuff, a lot of just movement in general in the mise en scène. That's just incredible. Just watch the opening sequence of Saving Private Ryan. Just what he's able to capture on screen and be so visceral and so beautiful at the same time is just amazing to me. So yeah, definitely check out his work. Of course, Spielberg, everybody knows who Spielberg is by this point.
Well, Andrew, I actually had Janusz Kaminski on my honorable mentions, and I had to watch both of these films this week because of that.
That's a double feature. Not an upper double feature there.
He was a tough omission, actually. I really thought I wanted to find room for Janusz Kaminski. I just couldn't do it because I had a couple other people that I wanted to focus on. But absolutely 100% right. I mean, Steven Spielberg's films look completely different from one another, but they all look visually gorgeous. You know, Steven, what is your number 3?
Oh, well, my number 3 is one that I've always really loved this this filmmaker's relationship with this. It's a lot of times I think a lot of these people on our list, they work with the same directors. You know, they have a relationship with them, and that makes typically for the best looking movies. I think when a director is working alongside a cinematographer, they are comfortable with, and this cinematographer works with Danny Boyle, and his name is Anthony Dodd Mantle. And the film I want to focus on is Slumdog Millionaire, because I think that movie, even though it gets a lot of crap, there are people that don't like that movie, they probably didn't even go see the movie because they were like, oh, it's that Who Wants to Be a Millionaire movie. Who cares? Well, the movie's freaking awesome. I'm sorry. It's good. It's a good dramatic coming of age piece, and it's awesome. And visually, talking about the cinematography, it is gorgeous. And he wins an Oscar for cinematography for this movie. But he's also, with Danny Boyle, worked on many of his works, whether it be going all the way back to 28 Days Later, Millions. He also did 127 Hours, this dude has a way of, and I think primarily a lot of what Danny Boyle does now is a lot of digital filmmaking. He's one of these directors that's decided to go into that, and I think that they pull off a lot of great stuff together. I think a lot of what I like about his is there's a difference between like a shaky cam and handheld style, and I think Anthony Dodd Mantle uses a lot more handheld camera movements when it comes to action and stuff like that, and it makes you feel like you're there. And it doesn't get on your nerves, it doesn't hurt your eyes from the it's smooth, but yet you feel like it's handheld and you're in the moment, and just the color palette, a lot of reds and purples and he just captures things so beautifully. Yeah, I mean, with Slumdog Millionaire, I love just watching that movie just to watch it, just to look at it, and I don't even have to I could turn off the sound and not know what they're saying and just look at that movie because it's so beautiful. And yeah, that's my number 3.
Well, wouldn't you know, Steven and I had the same number 3. I actually had Anthony Dodd Mantle as well for Slumdog Millionaire. I mean, this is a gem, an absolute gem of a film. And the thing about it, when you're dealing with kind of slums and you're dealing with kind of trash and you're dealing with mud and you're dealing with kinds of things that, like, wow, that can't be filmed good. But India itself is just a breathtaking, beautiful place. And so the mud and the grime and the trash and that sort of stuff, the dirt, kind of contrast to the bright yellows and reds and purples and things. And sometimes some of these buildings are just breathtaking to look at in India. And in the scenes when they're, asking the questions and the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire questions, the lighting of Dev Patel and how the game show works and how they captured those lights and the movement of the camera based on that was really a phenomenal feat by Dodd Mantle. And I'm right with Steven. This guy really got the aesthetics of what this film was supposed to be. And part of the reason why this is such a great film is that cinematography. It just captures the places and the things that were going on in India, and of course the wonderful, wonderful game. I've applied many, many times when it was on TV, and of course I never got through Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I love that show. As a early 20-something man, I wanted to get on there so bad. I love movie trivia. I wanted to just get on and be I know it's not movie trivia, but it's trivia in general. But yeah, I had the same exact one as Steve. That was a surprise. I did not expect that, Steven, that you and I would have Anthony Dodd Mantle for Slumdog Millionaire. That is definitely a surprise. All right, so we're at that point where we get to talk about Blade Runner 2049. And Andrew, take it away.
Oh, man. A lot of pressure, a lot of pressure. Okay. For anyone who knows me knows that the original Blade Runner film is one of my favorites of all time. It's a life-changing film for me, and I was actually very, very excited to see Blade Runner 2049, and I was not disappointed in it almost at all. It is a stunning film visually. Like we said earlier, Roger Deakins is a master of the visual arts. This film is one of the most gorgeous looking films I have ever seen. Every scene, every frame, everything is perfect from a visual standpoint. And I found myself so immersed in this film that I was discussing this with Steven before. People like me and Steven probably won't notice the runtime, as most people will. This film is long. It is 2 hours and 40 minutes. But if you are locked into it and you're just in this Blade Runner world, which is so rich and so vast, you're going to get lost in it. And I found myself getting lost in that world. Ryan Gosling is fantastic in this film. He doesn't have a lot of scenes with heavy dialogue in them. A lot of his acting is visual acting. A lot of it is in his eyes, in his expression, in his body language, which is something that is very underrated when it comes to him as an actor. A lot of people just look at him visually because he's a very handsome man. Women love him. Men probably love him too. I don't judge, but he is a great actor, and he is really great in this film. Harrison Ford is back reprising his original role as Deckard, and he is actually really good in the film as well. And the film expands upon the world of Blade Runner in very interesting ways. We are even further into the future now. Humanity is even less human than it was before. The synthetic world has really taken over our society even more than in the original Blade Runner, and it's kind of an interesting glimpse into a possible technologically dependent future. The further we are more dependent on technology. And without giving anything away from the plot, it's a very interesting movie. I think the plot and the screenplay is where I have a little bit of issues with it, but not enough to the point where I'm disappointed in any way. This movie really is an experience to behold. See it on the biggest screen, see it in IMAX if you can, 3D, whatever, because it's definitely worth your time in the theater. And it is very much an artsy movie, an art house movie. Don't think you're going into a mainstream movie, even if it's put out by a mainstream studio, because it's not. This is kind of a film lover's film, definitely from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, I'll talk more about that when it's my time. Steven, it's your time right now, so you get to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't got much more to say that Andrew didn't say. I loved this movie. I might have even loved it a little bit more than Andrew did. I don't know.
He may.
Yeah, because I honestly didn't really. I've seen it twice now. And I didn't really, the first time I saw it, I was watching it as a fan. I was watching it and just wanting to enjoy it and take it all in. And it was, even after watching it the first time, it was still a lot to take in. And I was just thinking about everything. But the second time I went to like watch it as like a film person, to like dissect it a little bit as I was watching it. And there's just nothing about this movie that I don't like. I don't think. I think from its visuals, obviously, the story it's trying to tell, the themes it's trying to throw at you, all I love it. Everything about it I love. I don't think they made one wrong move. I mean, some of the things I hear complaint-wise are either I didn't care much for the Jared Leto character, or which I think he was used just enough in the movie. I think he's perfect in the movie. I don't think there's anything wrong with him. And then I hear, of course, as Andrew hinted to, the length being too long. And I'm like, guys, okay, maybe this type of movie isn't for you. Maybe this is a little bit too, of an art house film for you. And that's fine. And I'm not trying to condescend anybody. Sometimes people just can't get into them type of films. It's the kind of film. It's like when you're into wine and you have a certain type of palate. There's certain wines you like more than other wines. It's fine. Film's the same way. There's certain types of films you don't like. And just because you don't like them doesn't mean you're any less of a film person. But this movie is for somebody that's really into film, that really appreciates every aspect of film. And this movie takes its time to tell its story, and it uses every scene, whether it be to tell more about the characters or more about the plot or more about the world you're living in. There's a lot of scenes of just showing landscapes and showing, the flying cars flying by. Like, you're like, they could have cut some of that out. No, I want to see the world that they're in. They don't tell us anything about it. They just show it to us. There's things that are in the movie. You're like, what's going on there? But they never tell us about it, because that's building a world without exposition. I mean, it's necessary, and it makes for what I think is a masterpiece of a movie. It is in my top of the year. It's up there with the Dunkirks, you know, and I think it's really cool that we're seeing major studios taking a little bit of risks this year. I think Get Out is another example of a movie that was a risky type of movie to put out because of its subject matter. And it's, yeah, I mean, awesome. I just can't wait to see it again.
Yeah, I mean, you guys really said a lot about it, but I just want to focus on a couple things that really stood out for me. You know, in this film, they visit multiple cities, and each city has a completely different aesthetic than the other cities. Like, of Los Angeles, and of the giant wall, and then there's an ocean that is outside that wall, and the wall is keeping the ocean out of Los Angeles. And then you see the water, and you see it splashing up against the wall and stuff like that. And then you're in Las Vegas, and it's just like the desert of Las Vegas has taken over, and it's just like you're in a giant desert that's like in the air. It's like a giant cloud. And then in San Diego, it's just a giant trash heap. It's just a piece of junk, giant trash heap, San Diego is. And it's like these cities all look completely different in the year 2049 that this film takes place. And they capture each one of these different settings that the city takes place. Then there's a farm near the beginning of the movie with Dave Bautista, and that looks like a really different, completely different aesthetic and vibe and visual. So these are all different places, different settings, different kind of visual aesthetic that Roger Deakins has to come up with in this film, and it all's in the script, and it's all just scene after scene after scene. It just goes along. You go along with the Ryan Gosling character of Kay or Joe, whatever you want to call him. He's either Kay or Joe, and it just and then there's like this Wallace Industries building that is one of the most breathtaking buildings. The hallways, I mean, it's just like, wow, where is this place? This is, they filmed this somewhere. Where the hell is this? I want to go there and see this building, these hallways and these areas where people are just lounging around and just sitting there and stuff. I'm like, where the hell is this place? It is a gorgeous looking building. I don't think I've ever seen a more beautiful inside of a building in my entire life. I mean, and Deakins just captures all of this, and that's what really comes to light in the Blade Runner 2049, and with the director Denis Villeneuve and the acting by Ryan Gosling, and also there's a henchwoman who's a clone. I had her name on my notes, and I don't know what I did with my notes. With
Sylvia something.
Hoeks. Right? Sylvia Hoeks, right? Hoeks. Hoeks.
Her character is Love.
Love. Yeah. I mean, she's straight out of a Bond film. That character's straight out of a Bond villain film. She could have been a Bond villain. She's so sinister and evil and nasty, but at the same time, so beautiful. The clothes she wears are just like, they are perfectly fit. They just fit her body and whatnot. I mean, it's just, and then there's like a hologram character, and she's just, how they capture this hologramish kind of character. Something Van Almost. What was her name? No, what was it? I can't think of her name. She's been in a few other movies, but she was like a love interest type of character for K/Joe. K/Joe. He goes by K, and he also goes by Joe, the Ryan Gosling character. It just, I was just blown away with everything about this film. The story was such a slow burn of when you have all this production value and all this stuff. What a slow burn of a story, just like Blade Runner, really. In a lot of ways, Blade Runner had a slow burn to it. And so does Blade Runner 2049. And it's the perfect sequel. It really is the perfect sequel to Blade Runner. Who ever thought you'd wait 35 years for a sequel and it would be actually probably maybe better than the original? And that's rare. That's rare, rare, rare. We're talking rare air here where the sequel is better than the original. Not too many films you could probably name between 5 and 10 that might actually be in that category. But absolutely loved Blade Runner 2049. And I'm going to be like Steve, and I think I might go see it again in IMAX, even though I saw an Epic XL. The local theater chain here has these giant screens. But I might see it in 3D. I might change up and try to see it in 3D. No, don't see it in 3D?
I don't care what anybody says. 3D can go to hell.
Oh, okay.
Didn't matter what movie it is.
All right. All right, Andrew, we're going back to number 2. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is probably another deep cut that maybe Dan doesn't know about, and that is a cinematographer by the name of Sven Nykvist, who is a Swedish cinematographer who shot many films from Ingmar Bergman. That's the connection I'm making here. For those of you not familiar, Ingmar Bergman is one of the most famous directors of all time. At least I hope people know who he is. He shot films like The Seventh Seal, which is kind of like Film School 101. Basically, you watch The Seventh Seal in every film school you go to. But he coincidentally, Sven Nykvist did not shoot. It was not the cinematographer for The Seventh Seal. That was another cinematographer. But he shot a lot of other great films from Ingmar Bergman, films like The Virgin Spring, films like Cries and Whispers, and the film I want to talk about, Persona, from 1966. Persona is one of the most surreal films I have ever seen. It is absolutely incredible if you want to watch a movie where you are going to be fully mentally provoked in such a way. You're going to be challenged to think about what is happening on screen. And it's a film that is kind of not a cult film, I would say, although when it came out, it was more of a cult underground film that like film school students would watch, like at beatnik nightclubs, like late at night, doing whatever, maybe watching it while on acid or smoking marijuana or something, and you would watch this movie, and it's so trippy and so incredible. And visually, it is unlike any other film I would say. There is a moment in this film where the film switches from being rather straightforward to extremely surreal. That is just incredible. For those of you not familiar, the film stars B.B. Anderson and Liv Ullmann, who were frequent actresses used in a lot of Ingmar Bergman films. But yeah, Sven Nykvist is one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Just check out any cinematographer list, and I think he'll show up. And what is interesting, when I was doing the research for this, I saw his name kept popping up, and I'm like, why is this guy on this list? And I'm like, oh, he shot all these Bergman movies. That makes a lot of sense, because there is nothing quite like an Ingmar Bergman film. I always say this every time I see a Bergman film. I think I know something about movies. I watch a lot of movies. You guys watch a lot of movies. So you think you know a lot about movies. But then I watch a Bergman film, and I feel like I've never watched anything before. Like, I feel dumb watching it because it is so new, so unpredictable, and so fresh that it's just an entire new experience. And a lot of that is to do with the visual aesthetic of a Bergman film. So yeah, definitely check out some Bergman if you really want to get into foreign cinema. He is definitely a staple of cinematic history.
All right, definitely I will look into that, Andrew. Good. Another deep cut on your part. You're starting to get a lot of blood on me because of all these deep cuts. Steven, you're up next.
Well, I won't get any more blood on you because we talked about this one already. But he's a must for me because if you know anything about me, I'm a Spielberg fan, so I have to get Giannis Kaminsky in here. But the one I'm going to talk about is one that I think for some reason, people don't like this movie. I mean, maybe it's because it's about horses and people don't like horse movies, but I love War Horse. I think War Horse is a fantastic film, and it's beautiful. It is, and he gets nominated for this film, and it's just, I love this movie. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's Spielberg has this way of making these films that, he can either make a really dark movie like a Munich or a Color Purple or Schindler's List or, but then he can make these like movies that are like kind of about dark subjects, but have a little bit of a whimsy to them that a feel goodness to them that you can, and I just love this movie about this horse that just makes its way through World War II, and you just follow its journey. And you got this young boy who kind of raised it and is trying to, it wants it to come back. It's like almost like a Homeward Bound story with a horse, but it's so beautifully done. You see different shots of whether it be the signature Spielberg close up that we get on a few occasions of the sunset, or the battlefield scenes where the horse is stuck in the middle of the battlefield and soldiers from both sides come out and let him out, and he just runs across the battlefield. It's ridiculous, and I think it's an underrated Spielberg film, and it's just Giannis Kaminsky does such a beautiful job of capturing everything, and it is my number 2.
Obviously, great choice. Andrew had it, and I had it in my honorable mentions. I mean, thinking back about cinematography, I mean, I couldn't even. I was trying to come up with 5. I mean, I got like 10 that it was like pulling teeth trying to, knock this one out and knock that one out. I mean, it's amazing how many great cinematographers there are. And I'm going to talk about one right now. I don't know if it's been known, but I'm a big fan of Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, and I'm a fan of his earlier films like 21 Grams, Babel, Beautiful. That trilogy of films is just an amazing trilogy of films, in my opinion. And one of the reasons why is the cinematographer, Rodrigo Prieto. And Rodrigo Prieto, I mean, each one of the films has a different aesthetic. They look different. And Babel has 5 different aesthetics within the film, 5 different interconnecting stories going on. And, I mean, it was my number 1 film. I know it's a big surprise, but Babel was my number 1 film of the 2000s. And whether you agree or you don't agree, it was my number 1 film. I just felt a connection with that film and the 5 interconnecting storylines by Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu. And obviously he has come full circle. He's won a best director Oscar and 3 Oscars for Birdman. Probably should have won another Oscar for did he win for The Revenant? No, okay. But he should have.
We talking Iñárritu?
Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu. Yeah.
Yeah, he won Best Director.
He won Best Director. The movie didn't win Best Picture.
Yeah, well, he's won 2 Oscars for Best Director. But the person, I mean, Rodrigo Prieto really makes his films come to life. Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu's films come to life. But the one I'm going to focus on isn't an Iñárritu film. I led you down a path, but I'm actually giving you a cross up here. And it's a film by Martin Scorsese called Silence. And Silence is a absolutely gorgeous film. I mean, there's ocean, there's kind of mountains, there's, just plains, there's like lily pad, rice paddy fields and whatever. I mean, I felt like I was in feudal Japan watching this film. It was so alive and so visceral, and it really interjected me into this story of these priests in this storyline. And it really didn't get a lot of love last year from film critics or people didn't go see the movie. But it was a love. It was one of those projects that Martin Scorsese had been doing for quite a while, and he really. What are you shaking your head for, Stephen?
I'm not doing anything that has to do with you, buddy.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just we Stephen and I both agree with you that it should have gotten more love than it did. Silence.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at Scorsese's other films, this film looks completely different than all of his other films, and that's because of Rodrigo Prieto and how he has captured the nature and the place that we're going to in this film, and that's why I have Rodrigo Prieto, not only for his Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu work, but also for Silence. All right, let's go into our number ones.
The most obvious number ones ever.
Yeah, probably all have the same number one.
I have a feeling because
I have a feeling.
Roger Deakins, we had to pick this guy.
Yeah, he's the default number one.
All right, Andrew. All right, let's all go. Let's all have 1, 2, 3.
Emmanuel
Lubezki.
Yeah, that's it. That's my notes right here. Emmanuel Lubezki. Yeah, we all got the same number one. All right, Andrew, talk about a film that you love from Emmanuel Lubezki.
Oh man, this is like trying to pick out my favorite slice of pizza from my favorite pizza. I mean, it's impossible. But you know what?
I got mine. I'll talk about it.
Yeah, I know. Steve, I almost don't want to take Stevens because I know which one he's going to talk about. So I'll leave it for Steven. So I'm going to go with The Revenant. I'm going to go with The Revenant because it's a film that I believe is a combination of two aesthetics. It's a film that has the beauty, the visual gorgeousness of a Terrence Malick film, but also the grit, grime, the aggressiveness of an Iñárritu film. The one thing that Iñárritu does in a lot of his films is his films feel very dark, feel very, very gritty, and you get a lot of that in The Revenant, but you also get the beauty with the cinematography. And what I find so fascinating about the movie is, if you learn about the production, is that they shot this thing on location, you know, in the forest, in the mountains, in like freezing cold weather, and they shot it all by natural light. Lubezki loves to use natural light, and natural light is damn near impossible to get right most of the time. It's very difficult to work with because you don't know what you're going to get, you know, and to keep things in continuity, you got to wait for it to be exactly the same again. So sometimes you're just there on set all day waiting for the time where you can actually shoot a scene, and you have to shoot it within a certain amount of time or else you'll lose the light, or the clouds will come over and the light will change, and all that kind of stuff. Is a lot of variables thrown in. So the film is aesthetically stunning, and there is no question why he won the best cinematographer Oscar 3 years in a row. He won it 2014, 2015, and 2016. Had he had done a movie last year, he probably would have won a fourth in a row. I mean, it's really just an incredible run from a cinematographer that I don't think we've ever seen before. I couldn't name you a cinematographer who's won 3 years in a row and it being so obvious. I mean, Gravity is a stunningly visual film. You could say what you want about the plot or whatever, but just visually, it's incredible. I felt as if I was in space. I feel as if I am on this survival story with Sandra Bullock's character, and it's just incredible. And Birdman, a near 2-hour movie that looks like it was shot in entirely one take, is incredible. I mean, we know it wasn't because they told us it wasn't, and you can see sometimes where there are some maneuvering when it comes to the editing, but just to try that and to pull it off as well as he did is incredible. So yeah, he is an amazing director of director of photography technically. So I'm not too far off, but cinematographer. He's worked with Alfonso Cuarón. He's worked with Inarritu. He's worked with Terrence Malick. And say what you want about Terrence Malick. I mean, Steve and I have discussed many times about the certain peculiarities of Terrence Malick movies. They're still visually stunning. That's seemingly what Malick just wants to be now, is a visually stunning director. So he's kind of achieved it from that sense. But yeah, Lubezki is amazing. If you can't choose Deakins, Lubezki is probably just as good. He really is, and completely different than Deakins too, which I find very interesting.
And here's your number one pick, The Revenant, right there. And Steven, what is your number one pick?
Well, yeah, with Emmanuel Lubezki, it was just, yeah. I mean, like I said, if you can't pick Deakins, you pick him. The one I'm going to go with is one that is maybe my number one movie of the 2000s, as Dan, like, my number one movie. It might be my number one, and it's Children of Men. Children of Men is just, God, I love that movie. It was one of the movies I saw. I still remember seeing it in theaters, and just sitting there, just being like, "What the hell did I just see?" It's so amazing. I was like, they're going to show it again, right? Like right now, like I'm just gonna sit in here and just watch it again. That's what I wanted to do, but I had to leave. They didn't let me stay. But this movie. What I think one of the big differences between him and Deakins is the use of handheld camera work. I think Lubezki uses a lot more handheld, and he also does these long takes, which I think most notably started with Children of Men, where there's this battle scene where they're going through this chaos of this war, and Clive Owens has got this girl that's pregnant, and he's trying to get her through the war zone, and you get this one shot of just him just dodging bullets and just cannons going off, and it's amazing. And from there he's went on to kind of use the same techniques and Gravity and in Birdman, and it's kind of become his thing where he does a lot of long takes. But Children of Men is just one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen, and it's one of the best dystopian films I've ever seen. It's just a great film. But yeah, Emmanuel Lubezki is, I'm sure we'll be seeing him this year. I don't know if he's got a movie coming out this year or not, but whatever he does next, I'm sure he will get nominated for it because he's just that good.
Well, here's a movie both of you have mentioned, and that's Gravity, right there. Gravity, that he did the cinematography on. But my film that Emmanuel Lubezki did the cinematography on, I kind of alluded to at the beginning when I was talking about Roger Deakins, because of the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, kind of looked like a Terrence Malick film. Well, my number one is a Terrence Malick film, and it's The New World. And I think this is the most beautiful film I have ever seen in my entire life. I couldn't imagine a more beautiful world to discover than this world that Terrence Malick and Emmanuel Lubezki created, which is The New World. And this is a breathtakingly beautiful film, a phenomenal film that does not get enough love. It has great acting. I mean, everything about this film is phenomenal. And I just, people talk about Terrence Malick, he's a hit and miss. Well, Thin Red Line came out, and his next film, not that long after, was The New World. Then he started doing these silent films where people weren't talking a lot. And it was like relationship stuff and things like that, But this film, there was talking, there was discovery, there was Indians, there was Spaniards, there was the New World. There was trees, there was ocean, there was woods, there was. I mean, what an absolutely beautiful, beautiful, beautiful film, The New World. I cannot say enough how much I love that film. When I saw that film for the first time in the early 2000s, I was like, my jaw was dropped. I just could not imagine a more beautiful place that anybody could create. You know, I'm from New England. I've went to the woods and I've been in places that look like what they created in the New World, and it still didn't look as gorgeous and breathtaking as this world they filmed on screen. They put on screen. It was just such a beautiful, beautiful film. So that's why I have The New World for Emmanuel Lubezki as my number one. Relatively quickly, you guys got some honorable mentions. I have at least 5 of them here. Of course, you guys named the Spielberg one. The guy, what was it? Janusz Kaminski. So I don't have to talk about him. But if you guys got 1 or 2 that we can run through really quick, go ahead. Andrew?
Yeah. One I always mention, the late great Harris Savides, who shot a couple of feature films, most prominently Zodiac and The Game. I think he was a great cinematographer that doesn't get a lot of love. Ellen Kuras, who shot Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, is another one. Laszlo Kovacs. Gordon Willis, better known as the Prince of Darkness, who shot The Godfather as well as a few Woody Allen films. I believe Annie Hall and Manhattan come to mind. So yeah, those 3 definitely some. There are so many. I mean, we could go back, decades and decades. So I'll leave some for you guys.
Steven?
I got one that I'll talk about for a second, and say Robert D. Yeoman, who works with I'm losing the name.
Hold on.
That works with why am I blanking on the name? Oh, Wes Anderson.
Yeah, he does all the Wes Anderson movies.
Sorry. I don't know why I forgot his name. But yeah, he works with Wes Anderson, worked on a lot of his films, mostly his later films with Grand Budapest and World Tenenbaums is actually one of the early ones he worked on. But just knowing how his aesthetics is now, Wes Anderson's kind of grown into this certain visual style, and he obviously is comfortable with this cinematographer, using a lot of straight angle camera movements, like, very much just a straight line or a straight pan here, straight up and down, they got a certain style. And of course, using, a lot of sets, a lot of back sets, paintings and stuff like that. There's a certain way you got to do that stuff. And that, not all, directors of photography are good at. So he has a certain style, and that's, I think he stands out. So that's the one I'll talk about.
Yeah, there are others too. I don't want to cut off Dan here, but Robert Elswit, who shoots all of Paul Thomas Anderson's work. I mean, if you want to talk about long takes, I mean, Paul Thomas Anderson uses them a lot. I mean, you have other people who worked with Martin Scorsese, like Michael Ballhaus. You have Vittorio Storaro, who worked a lot with the French New Wave directors, specifically Jean-Luc Godard, if you're familiar with that aesthetic, which is completely different. Vilmos Zsigmond, who shot The Deer Hunter, is another great one from like the 1970s era. Yeah, there's so many of them. But Dan, do you have some more?
As a matter of fact, I do. One of my favorite films of all time. The cinematographer later in his career worked a lot with David Cronenberg, Eastern Promises, History of Violence. But one of my favorite films of all time, he did the cinematography on, and it's called The Empire Strikes Back. And what a beautifully, the film is a great film, but it is a beautiful film to look at. The Hoth scenes, the Cloud City of Bespin, those scenes were just really beautiful scenes. And Peter Sheminsky, another one of my favorite films of all time is Unforgiven, and Jack N. Green was the cinematographer on Unforgiven. And I'll tell you what, you want to talk about capturing the Old West? This guy really captured the Old West in this aesthetic that I think a lot of people, if you watch movies that are based on Westerns, have captured a similar kind of vibe since Unforgiven. A lot of films that, there's not a lot of Westerns, but they look like Unforgiven. A lot of these Westerns kind of look like Unforgiven after Jack and Green kind of, and Clint Eastwood kind of, they captured this Old West feeling. Another one that I just think is a beautiful film. The colors just jump off the screen, and it's a crazy film. Don't get me wrong, but it's a beautiful looking film when you watch it, and that's Taxi Driver. And cinematographer is Michael Chapman on Taxi Driver. And there's so many great cinematographers. There's so many beautiful films out there, and hopefully we shed some light on some of these gentlemen that are out there making movies and giving us these beautiful visuals to look at every week and every month and every year. And hopefully Roger Deakins gets his Oscar. I think I can speak for these guys, and this guy is well deserved to get an Oscar. If he's going to get one, why not for this film? It's an absolutely breathtakingly beautiful film. It's definitely the most beautiful, gorgeous aesthetics I've seen all year long. I mean, Dunkirk is a beautiful film, don't get me wrong, but I still don't think it's as good as Blade Runner 2049 when it comes to the visuals and the aesthetic of it. So, Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Cabzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions.
Steven.
You can find me YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Stephen Billings, or MovieMan16, or whatever handle I'm using. I don't know.
Yeah, I was wondering who that Movie Man was.
MovieMan16 for life.
Yeah, I was looking at that one a while ago. You can find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. You can also go to my YouTube channel, Dan Allen. I do movie reviews on there. I'm going to be doing a new show called Upon Further Review, where I and a co-host will be talking about a specific sports movie. It could be a golf movie, a football movie, a basketball movie, a baseball movie. And there's a lot of them to talk about, so we could be doing this for quite a while. Hopefully the show is successful and we keep doing it and we get a lot of people to watch it. Next week is going to be the kickoff of that new show, but also it's going to be a connection with the Top 5 Weekly, because we're doing long time in coming baseball characters. I've been wanting to do baseball, something to do with baseball movies for quite a while now, and it's going to be a kind of a connection with my new show, Upon Further Review. So the Top 5 Weekly is going to be baseball characters next week, and with the playoffs going on right now, my Red Sox aren't doing that good, but what are you going to do? You can't win them all. We got 3 World Series in the last 15 years, so I'll take it. So for Andrew and Steven and myself, good night.